Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we are going to be testing the iPhone 12 Pro for video. In my previous 3 iPhone 12 Pro videos, I showed you the unboxing, I showed you a great cheap option for a case, and a great option for a tempered glass screen protector. The links to all 3 of those videos will be down in the description below. But today, let's focus on the cameras, in particular, video. Just how good is the iPhone 12 Pro for video? Let's jump in and find out. First up is this small green leafed plant that I found at a park. I'm just testing the macro capability, or basically the closest focused distance. I'm really trying to get a sense for the clarity of these lenses, the clarity of the 4K, and also we'll look at some 1080p a little bit later. But right off the bat, my first impressions were good. Looking at the screen of the iPhone, everything looks great. It's nice and sharp with good color. By the way, this is 4K at 24 frames a second. Now, to get some perspective, why don't we compare this footage with a camera that I'm very familiar with, the Sony RX100 Mark V. I've been using this camera for years now, and to tell you the truth, I never shoot in 4K. Personally, I don't find I need the extra quality versus the gigantic file size I get with 4K. Like I said, I've been shooting for years, and I'm fine with 1080p, and no one ever complains about it. But in this case, I flipped on the 4K 24p just to match up with the iPhone, and what I found was very interesting. Although filming on that iPhone while at the park outside looking at the screen, it looked incredible. I'm finding that the Sony RX100 in 4K looks better. Now, obviously the colors here are a lot different, but I do find the colors out of the Sony to be more accurate. The iPhone is obviously a lot more vibrant, but the colors from the Sony are just more realistic. Now, looking at the actual clarity of the footage, again, I'm finding the Sony to be much more crisp, much more sharp than the iPhone. Just to clarify, I'm not saying that the iPhone footage looks bad by any means. I think it looks fantastic, especially when you're not pixel peeping like we are and comparing it to another camera with a much larger sensor. In a sense, this isn't really a very fair comparison. The sensor on the iPhone 12 Pro is very small compared to the much larger sensor in the RX100 Mark V. But the devices themselves, well, they are somewhat similar. The RX100 Mark V is what you might call a very pocketable camera, and as we all know, the iPhone 12 Pro is probably the most pocketable camera, and that's why I wanted to compare the two. They are the two types of cameras you would grab to, I don't know, vlog or just film random footage. Of course, the iPhone is going to be on you all the time, whereas you'll have to specifically want to take a camera like the RX100 with you. So the iPhone wins in that regard, in that it is always going to be on you, and the footage just looks plain great. But by comparing the iPhone to this Sony RX100, it really gives us perspective on just how good the iPhone's video is. What I found was, with the iPhone's wide lens, the middle of the 3, I could get very close to my subject, and even a little closer using the telephoto lens, believe it or not. The ultra-wide, not so much. With the ultra-wide, you're going to want to stand back away from your subject, as it's not meant for close-up photography at all. But you will have no problem using the wide and especially the telephoto lens getting macro shots. The iPhone was definitely able to get a lot closer than the RX100, which was good. But again, the RX100 footage is just a lot more clear, a lot more crisp. Looking at this footage here, we can see the color differences are pretty shocking. The Sony is trying to expose pretty evenly for the scene, but because there's a big bright sky back there, the bushes and stuff here in the foreground are pretty dark. However, as you can probably tell, the image is extremely sharp. Looking at the iPhone footage, it seems a little more pleasing to the eye. and that's because these bushes here in the foreground do have some good light, and the sky is properly exposed. But when we look closer, well, that's when things start to fall apart. The iPhone's 4K footage just looks soft and full of artifacts. I actually was kind of shocked to see this. I thought that maybe something happened when I airdropped the files from my iPhone to my MacBook Pro. But then I went back to the iPhone and actually zoomed in on the footage directly on the iPhone, and it was the same. Let's take a break from comparing the Sony with the iPhone, and let's look at the iPhone's 3 camera angles. As you know, with the Pro, we're getting the ultra wide, the wide, and the telephoto lens. So right here, we're looking at the ultra wide view, and right here, we're looking at the wide view, and finally, here's the telephoto view. Pretty big differences, which is good. I gotta say, I am very impressed with the telephoto lens on this iPhone 12 Pro. Lastly, I filmed this larger leaf tree on the iPhone using the wide and the telephoto lens, and of course, it looks fantastic. The colors pop and it's nice and sharp, especially when we're not comparing it to another camera. And that's the common theme here, guys. The iPhone 12 Pro shoots great video. The only reason for comparing is, well, just to give a little perspective. And of course, we pixel peep, well, because that's just plain fun. The reality is, sensor size plays a huge role in the quality of your footage. The larger the sensor usually means you're gonna get better quality, more organic looking video. The smaller the sensor usually means you're gonna get more of that digital look, that kind of over-sharpened details kind of look. But if you're just grabbing your iPhone, heading out for the day, and wanting to capture some footage, even if you're gonna vlog, the iPhone is plenty good. The footage out of it looks incredible, especially on the iPhone screen. And let's be honest, most of this media that we are consuming is directly on our phones. We're watching YouTube on our phones mostly. And realistically, watching video on a screen as small as our phone screens, you're not really going to see a big difference in sharpness and clarity at all. This is why in the beginning of this video, I told you that I usually only film in 1080p. And that's simply because 1080p is perfect for the size of our phone screens. And unless I was producing something for a TV-sized screen, I really don't see a need to move to 4K just yet. It's going to save me about 2 to 3 times the amount of data on my hard drives, and again, 1080p looks really good on a phone-sized screen. So after viewing all of this footage, I'm going to leave my iPhone 12 Pro in HD. That's right, I'm not going to leave it on 4K. I will use 4K from time to time when I feel like I need it, but for the majority of the time, it's going to stay in HD. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this first look of the iPhone 12 Pro's video footage. I hope you learned something from it like I did, and I really hope that you hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I'm Jimmy with The General Expert here on YouTube, signing out.